We have a mom here today that has firsthand experience. My name is Joanne Shango. I'm an educator. I've been teaching in Montessori schools for the past 25 years, and thought I had pretty good experience to raise children, and did with my first two. And then my third child, he was a little bit different, and turns out he had sensory processing disorder. And that was hard. We didn't quite get it because it kind of seemed like just behavioral, it's just attitude. And he'd been adjusted with Dr. Saylor since he was about 8 months old. He'd had chronic ear infections, and she was growing to know him, and she was like, I think maybe it's behavioral, but there's something else, And so we started doing OT for sensory processing, and it was pretty effective. While we were doing that, I actually made a choice to not do the chiropractic because I wanted to just, see what was OT doing. And about halfway through it, I urgently went back to Dr. Saylor and said, he really needs an adjustment. And it kind of helped even click the OT with the chiropractic, and was really helping him a lot. And so then he did really well for about a year. In his sensory processing, he's really sensitive to sound. He's also sensitive to touch. And it comes out in a very aggressive way that seemed very extreme and unnatural, particularly with sensory kids. The touch that feels like this when somebody just brushes you by, it feels like somebody punched them, and so then they punch back. And yet nobody would see what happens. So it's completely, instigated, not instigated. He's just picking fights, and we just really didn't know what was happening. And he was labeled. He didn't, no, I'm going to get emotional. His 4-year-old year, he didn't get invited to any birthday parties outside of Brighton's. And it was so hard because he was at my school where I'm the principal, and I understood it. I understood why they weren't inviting him, but it was really, really hard. About this time last year, he was doing better, and he came to me and he said that he wanted to go back to therapy. And I wasn't as consistent with the chiropractic. She's my neighbor. We get there pretty often, but not as consistently as we had been. So I called the doctor and I said, he's asking to go back to OT. And she said, then, he knows his body, so listen to him. And we started going to OT, and he started regressing, which is not normal for sensory process, kids with SPD. So then I had to ask the hard question. First of all, are they doing their job right? Like, what are you guys doing wrong? Like, are you making a mistake here with his therapy? And they said no. And if he's regressing, then maybe it's something else. And the signs were not pointing overall to him being autistic, but it would be the only explanation for a kid with SPD to go backwards. So I freaked out, went to Anna, and she was kind of feeling like, maybe that was coming up, which really freaked me out. And the pediatrician said, well, let's do a few things. And she, sent him to get allergy testing and all of this kind of stuff. And she wanted to have a neuropsych exam. And I was contemplating it. As an educator, I'm not big on labels. I'm a Montessori educator. We don't do labels very well. And so I was kind of freaking out, and I backed off of it for a little bit because my gut was telling me he's definitely sensory, but maybe not autistic. And it'd be okay, he's a great kid, but I wasn't feeling that was the right thing. We started diligently going to Dr. Saylor, and the difference in my son is extraordinary. She's so intuitive with her adjustments, and she can adjust for emotional things, and she can adjust for physical things, and piecing it all together. And he walks into the office with her, and he's like at peace. It's like from 8 months old, he'd walk in and she'd come over with this tool that should be like scary because it looks like a gun, and he's like, oh, and would get adjusted at 8 months and feel at peace, and now at 5.5 and feels at peace. He asks for adjustment before he can tell her where he wants to be adjusted. She's there, and he's basically saying thank you, to her. He's a different kid. Today we were at gymnastics, and a neighbor that hasn't seen him in over a year just looked at him, and she doesn't know his story really, but she said, wow, he's a different kid. And I said, yeah. And she's like, what's going on? And I said, well, why do you think he's different? She's like, he's slower. And he was having a bad day today, just so you all know, because he still has those, And he was having a rough day. And she was like, whoa, like huge difference with this kid, and I said, what? And she's like, he's making eye contact. I could actually hear all of his words, because he's always been able to talk. He started talking out of the womb, but he was always talking in fast forward, like faster than I'm talking right now, and because I'm nervous. I mean, she just pegged it. I mean, within 35 seconds of seeing him today, she was like, different kid, and this is the kid that a year ago we thought maybe it's not just SPD, maybe it is autism, and regular chiropractic care. She saved his life. He'd be a different kid. He'd be a kid without friends. He used to vocalize and say, oh, when he'd have his really rough days, he'd say, nobody likes me, I have no friends, I'm the worst person ever. And he has friends, and he's like, who's coming over to my house today? You know, can I have a sleepover? And this is a kid that we couldn't even contemplate that a year ago. And he's been adjusted since birth, but since we really started pegging that this could be something that could really spin out of control, diligently 2 times a week, sometimes 3 times a week, she saved his life. He's an amazing kid that's top of his class now, and believes he can do anything. And he has friends, and it's really, really great.